All right, now we got plenty of time.
Beautiful. Yeah.
All right, let's do this.
So yeah, for the last week and a half, I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, so my voice kind of feels a little groggy, but we'll try to keep it as clean as we
No, let's dive right in.
Beautiful.
All right, so Ron, you are getting ready to go climb Mount Everest. Now, I think a lot of people, they've maybe seen videos, they've maybe heard about it, but they have no idea what it takes from a training perspective and a mindset perspective to go climb, arguably, I mean, this is without a doubt, the most challenging peak in the world. Is that correct?
Indeed. First off, I want to start by thanking you for the invitation.
Oh yeah, man! I'm so excited for this, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk about my life's dream.
Yeah.
You know? And so yeah, just to kind of jump right into it, right? This coming spring, I'm actually set already to head on into Nepal, April 5th. Right? The idea is to arrive into Kathmandu, maybe spend a day or two doing a little bit of briefing, gear cross-check and all that stuff, right? From there on, we're going to take a domestic flight from Kathmandu into Lukla, which is considered the Tenzin Norgay airport.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the gateway into the Himalayas, right? And so from there on, we begin our trek nice and slow, right? Through the different villages that we'll be going across, right? This particular area of the Himalayas, right? It's very symbolic because there's this old ancient voodoo temples that we'll be seeing. And so there's going to be that, majestic spiritual side to it.
And how long is that process? Like when you actually land, I mean, we're going to go back of how you got here, but like when you actually land in Nepal to when you actually go to summit Everest, how long of a process is that?
Yeah, so just to give you a synopsis, right? The trek that we'll be doing starting from Lukla into base camp, we're probably looking about 10 to 12 days. And the reason they do it in such a way, right, is just to kind of use it as a gradual acclimatization process. And so I estimate that we'd probably be climbing about 1,000 feet or something and arriving to the next village, maybe spend the night there, enjoy some tea and stay at some of these tea houses. Next day, you kind of repeat the process, going to the next village, right? Once you get to base camp, we're probably going to rest it up for a few days. During those few days, we're also going to be starting to do some training. In particular, the stuff that we'll be looking at would be more ladder crossing.
Ladder crossing.
Ladder crossing.
So at this point, when you get to base camp, and I think we've seen, some people have maybe seen this on TV or whatnot. Base camp is at basically the bottom of Everest, and you could stay there for. Is there different base camps? Is that the way it works?
No, this is kind of like the main general base camp, right? So from there on, you're looking at either Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, and Camp 4, which is the highest camp that we're going to stage.
So at base camp, is there any like amenities, for lack of a better term? Or is it you're just camping, you're out in the wild? I mean, do you have to bring everything with you? I mean, there is just so much to unpack here. Because everything that you have on yourself for... I mean, you backpack it the whole way, right?
That is correct. So at least, right, going into base camp, right, let's talk about a little bit about life at base camp.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you said the right word, right? In terms of amenities, this is a place that it almost become, at least during climbing season, it almost become like a big city. Right, where you run into a lot of expeditions that are set for Everest, right, and people from all over the world. And at this particular location, right, you will still have the normal amenities. There might be a portal party for you to take care of your bodily needs and so forth. Some expeditions, right, would provide internet, right, just to get a little Wi-Fi connection and so forth. So life there is just, pretty chill. You rest, you kind of just start preparing, you kind of use it as an area to start the acclimatization process, right? Already, right, at base camp, you'll be at 17,500 feet. So
17,000?
17,500 feet.
And taking a pivot to the conversation, what is the highest, because you've been climbing for years and years and years. What's the highest you've already climbed?
To be honest, it would be Mount Aconcagua, which is the highest peak you can imagine in Los Andes in South America. This peak is already 6,662 meters.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's nearly 23,000.
Okay, so the base camp is still below what you've already done before.
Based on what I've done below.
Yes. So then after you're acclimated at the base camp, you go to camp 1, camp 2. How long is the climbing season for Mount Everest?
Yeah, so for this particular expedition, we're looking at a 60-day duration, right? And the reason why it takes so long, right, is because you want to make sure that you do the trek into base camp as slow and chill as possible, right? Just to kind of start gauging how your body is adapting to high altitude, right? Once you get to base camp and you have those few days of rest to settle down, you do some training, ladder crossing, jumaring of fixed lines and stuff like that, right? Setting out the gear that is set to go with you for high camps, right? After that, you begin what is called rotations, right? And the way to, just to better describe how these rotations are done, or you're looking at maybe going from base camp to camp 1, one single shot, right? And that's the first chance that you get to cross the mighty Khumbu Icefall, which is this massive glacier that is constantly moving, right? From there on, you're looking to come back to base camp, maybe rest for a day or two, depending on the weather and how the weather is looking. The next rotation will be going from base camp to camp 2. Right? Third rotation will be base camp to camp 3, right? From there, you're probably going to come back to base camp and just rest for a few days. By then, we're probably looking at mid-May, right? And that's when the expedition will start staging itself to go to the highest camp, position themselves for a good weather opportunity so that you can go for a summit attempt.
Wow. So you're at base camp, you go up 1, go up 2, etc. Yeah. But you don't stay there. You just go up there, and it's almost like a day trip.
It's like a day trip. Yeah, at least when you do the rotations.
And then when you're at this this final base camp, you then stay there overnight, and you're waiting for the weather to be appropriate?
That is correct.
Now, what is the altitude at that camp? Camp 3 or camp 4?
Yeah. So let me just take camp 4, which is the highest camp that you would stage at briefly, right? Yeah. We're looking at 26,000 feet. There is what is considered the dead zone, right?
The dead zone.
Yeah, and the reason why they call it the dead zone is because there you would just be capitalized on maybe 30% of the molecules from the oxygen that you'll be breathing, right? So by then, we'll be highly dependent on artificial oxygen.
So at base camp, so once you get to camp 4, will that be at the highest peak or some that you've been at in your life?
If you wanted to use this particular expedition as a reference, yes.
Yeah. And so then at that point though, how long can you stay there on external oxygen?
Yeah. So the way the expedition is going to set, right? We're going to try to have sufficient literature of artificial oxygen with us, as specifically at that camp, because that's where we're going to be dependent on. This could go for maybe a day or 2 days, right? And if the weather allows for you to just go the same night, right? You make the summit push the same night and you try to descend as fast as possible.
And now from base camp, from 4 to summit and back, how long does that journey take?
Yeah, we're probably looking at taking the average of how most summiteers do it, right? You're looking at easily an 8 to 12-hour day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I know I pushed right into Everest. I'm just so fascinated by it because I imagine the answer to your question. If I wanted to go with you on this expedition, right? Yeah. I'm pretty physically fit. I stay active. You would probably tell me that is the worst idea ever. I imagine it'd be like me trying to go in the ocean and go, surf a 50-foot wave. It's just asking to it's asking to risk my life. You have been working your whole life to get to this expedition, and I want to talk about how do you even get to the point where you think climbing Everest is a good idea, and how do you earn that confidence to get there? I mean, let's go way back, because let me ask you this. It is not recommended for someone without any mountaineering climbing experience to go try Everest. Is that correct?
Yeah, indeed.
It's pretty obvious,
It
right?
would be maniacal.
It'd be maniacal.
Yeah.
So how do you get to the point where, you know, it's so funny because, you know, you've been a coach here at NCFIT, and which is it's so awesome. You really live this at NCFIT. What I love is to provide a program in the gym that helps people live freely and fully outside the gym. And I can't think of a better expression than someone who could go out there and go use their fitness in such a, you know, different type of way. So how did you get to the point where you're now ready to go climb Mount Everest? Let's go way back. How did you get into this in the first place?
Well, good question, right? Because I guess I get to kind of jump in a little more about how I started.
100%. I want to know all about it. Yeah.
Right. So it begins a few years back, right? When out of a weird situation, right? I guess I have to say it in this way, right? Where I kind of started with the highest outside of the Himalayas, right? Because the peak that I mentioned before, right? Aconcagua, highest of Los Andes, which is literally 38 meters short from being a 7,000 meter peak, right? So it's pretty high. I got a taste of what real a thin air life is like, right? And so from that moment, right, this happened in 2017, by the way. And so at that time, I was hitting the CrossFit workouts. I felt like I was incredibly fit. I was an amazing ultra runner that I was just, killing it, right? And I felt like I had lungs for life. And so after I went through that suffering, it was just like a total hook for me to say, you know what? This is a real testament of fitness, right?
Yeah.
And I love it, right? And it's just like you fight those elements of the mountains, right? The mountains are just grueling. They're not gonna have mercy on you, right? You battle in the cold, you battle in the altitude, which just to describe what breathing at high altitude feels like, think about breathing through a straw.
Yeah, people thought that breathing with a mask on was bad.
Oh no, absolutely not. That's easy training. It's been an easy training for me, by the way. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that during these 2 years that we've been so accustomed to wearing a mask, right, because of the whole COVID pandemic, maybe that helps me breathe better.
Maybe that helps you breathe better.
Yeah. So going back to that, right? So that was like the moment where I say, you know what? I think I'm made for this, right? I enjoy the suck of this, right? And it allows me to go back to the gym, keep doing my fitness and sharing my fitness journeys with other people, right? Because this is what we do here at NCFIT Pleasanton, right? We walk people every day through their fitness journeys, right? And so for me, from there on, it's like, you know what? Let me see what would be the next one, right? So sooner or later, I decided to go into Africa to climb the highest peak in Africa. Then the next year, I flew into Europe and Russia, to be honest. To climb the highest peak in the European continent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Then it was like I had this momentum, right? Every year my goal was to be able to do an expedition, and everything was just going perfectly fine. 2019, I come back and I prepare for Denali, right? Denali is another game, right? Highest in North America, is known for being a super cold mountain. It is pretty tall, right? And one thing that I can describe about Denali, right, in the sense of being so challenging, is that it has this component of self-reliance, right? You're pulling a sled. Right?
You're pulling a sled.
You're pulling a sled while you carry an expedition pack.
And this was so there's like 7 peaks, is that right?
That is correct. So I guess we're referring to the 7 summits of the world.
And how many have you done?
I've done 4 of those.
And so out of the 4 that you've done so far, which one was the most challenging?
I had to give it up to Denali.
Denali. And so you're pulling a sled. You're pulling a sled. And how long of a trek is that? How long does that take you?
Yeah, so when we planned for Denali, right, we set ourselves to do an expedition for 21 days. We actually summit on the 16th day. So for me, it kind of went relatively faster than I had anticipated. Yeah, but just to take you back to some training, right, that would better describe from Denali. On Denali, there was one time that I can never forget this moment, right? We were going up this particular hill. It's called Motorcycle Hill.
Motorcycle Hill.
Motorcycle Hill. Okay. And it's a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
Ice. And so
and you're using ice picks, and I mean,
so we're wearing the mountaineering boots with crampons attached to them so that we can really scaff and be able to bite into the ice. Right? Yeah. We're using an ice axe. We have an expedition pack. And I remember that time I was carrying about 68 pounds on my expedition pack while still pulling 36 pounds on my sled up of this hill. There was a point where I was like, you know what? I think my back is about to wreck. I feel like my back is about to break. And you battle in this hill, right? And it's already near 12,000 feet.
Yes, you're breathing hard. It's cold. It's miserable. It's already day 10 or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's like, you're already like maybe day 9 or 10 of the expedition, right? You're already sleep deprived, right? You're not getting the most recovery, right? And so so I can never forget that moment, right? Because it was the true test. It was like, you know what? I trained myself doing treks with this backpack at 50 pounds, doing even rock climbs with it, right? And I said, here I am pulling 68 plus 36 pounds on my sled. I was not prepared for this.
Right.
So that was the moment, right, that really, it tested everything out of me from a physical perspective, right?
Now you're doing this in a group?
Yeah, for that one we joined an actual expedition.
And you know these people, or you get to know them?
You kind of get to meet them on the spot, right? Which makes it a very suitable experience, right? To have that.
So talk me through that, because, shared suffering is such a big part of team sports in high school and here at the gym as well. Do you guys then find yourself bonding through this experience? Do you stay friends, or is it kind of like you come, you support each other, and then afterwards you don't really connect?
Very much, right? This it's such an amazing experience, right? Because you meeting these people from all different walks of life, and you become so amazed to hear their stories that you automatically connect, right? The mountains. Here's the thing about mountaineering, right? It's just there is no egos, right? Egos are left at the door, right? The mountain has no mercy on you. So this is the place where you really meet people are their truest. And so you really connect with them, right? You really connect with them, and as you get through the expedition, right, you always stay friends, and you kind of stay updated on what they're planning to do for the next climb.
And so you said that you started climbing in 2017, and prior to that you're ultra running, doing CrossFit. When did you come to the United States?
I moved into the United States back in 1988. I was 16 years old at the
16.
time. Yeah, 16.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you came to the United States, did you come alone?
I moved to reconnect with my mother. Correct.
You moved to reconnect with your mother. That's right.
Yeah.
When you were 16.
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah. And now, okay, got it. And so then over the years now, mountaineer, is this going to be like the thing that you do for the rest of your life? Is that what you're committing? Do you want to hit all 7 peaks? What are the goals for mountaineering?
Yeah, so good question, right? Because my stretch goal right now is set to climb the 7 highest summits of the world. With Everest coming up, right, this could anticipate to be my 5th. And prior to this expedition that is already planned for, I was actually scheduled to head out for my 5th, which is this another peak that constitutes the highest point in Oceania. It's in the middle of Papua New Guinea, right? Yeah. And because of COVID, right? Because of the COVID, it got canceled, so it's still pending at this point.
So now, why Everest now versus hitting the other? Because Everest is not the tallest peak, right?
Yeah, I guess in the sense of the 7 summits, it is. But if you think about the highest, absolute highest mountains in the world, then there's more.
There's more. Yeah. But why is Everest held as like So I guess my question is twofold. Why Everest now before the other peaks before it? And then why is Everest held on like this pedestal as like the holy grail?
Yeah, well, good question, right? Because I mean, in terms of answer the question, why Everest now? It's I guess I would say it's just coincidental that during these 2 years that we've been technically paralyzed because of COVID, right? I have not had momentum, right? At least in the climbing scene. And however, I've been making deep strides to stay fit, right? To maintain, right? And so it all came down to like, you know what? We're hungry. We're hungry for movement, and why not Everest, right? These 2 years that have kept us in total isolation, I guess it has just made it for us to feel more hungry for it.
And so that's why you just
that's
like,
why.
I'm going.
We're
and
going
now why does Everest? I know you explained the base camp and the different things and how it's like months of commitment, which I want to get into with you. But why is Everest held at such a high regard? What about it makes it so dangerous? Is it the cold? I mean, I know it's a combination of things, but why more so than K2 or any of these other peaks?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the highest of all, right, Everest does constitute as the pinnacle of the world, right? So let's make that very clear, right? That if you're thinking about standing at the top of the world, highest pinnacle, right, that would be the place, right?
That would be the place.
Everest Summit is the one. In terms of technicalities, right, let's make it very clear that just inside the Himalayas alone, there is the 14 peaks, which are Everest is one of them, of course, right? Those are the highest mountains in the world in the sense of being above 8,000 meters high. Some presenting different challenges, at least in the technical side of it, right? And so with that comes the danger aspect, right? Some, because like when we think about K2, right? K2 is a highly technical mountain. It's deadly in the sense that it's very precarious, right? If you're not in the right moment, in the right window of opportunity, things may not go your way.
Well, let's talk about that. So we talk about, safety and you watch these different shows, and I actually had some gentlemen who trained at our gym to get ready for Everest, and they were at base camp. Yeah. And an avalanche occurred. Yeah. And it's really interesting. There were Google executives that trained at our gym. Yeah. And this gentleman hid behind a rock. I'll never forget talking to him about it. He hid behind a rock in the but it was a deadly avalanche. And so I guess from a mindset perspective, you're putting yourself at this risky situation, but there's a lot of things that are in your control. Some things are out of control, like weather and whatnot. But how do you break through the mindset of like you're going knowing that there's imminent danger, but yet you're prepared for it as best you can? What is that mindset? What type of compartmentalization, mindset tools have you been using and incorporating over the last, 5, 6, 7 years now to get ready for Everest?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, Jason, and I'll try to answer it to the best extent that I can, right? It is true, right, that with these expeditions and being able to attempt some of these mountains, right? You got to take into consideration, right? Do I feel physically prepared for it, right? But for me, the most crucial part of it is, am I mentally prepared for it, right? And so it is true, right, that the danger is pretty imminent, right? There is the risk, and that is pretty imminent, right, when you do these expeditions. However, for me, right, I trust my process. I trust my physical training. I trust my mental ability to adapt to these elements, right? And I'm always the climber, right, who would push it the hardest, but at the same time would take calculated risk, right? And yeah, many people ask me this question a lot. It's like, do you feel any kind of fear? And the truth is yes, right?
Right, which is natural, and you probably should.
Yeah, fear is a natural thing, right? But what I try to do, at least while I'm at the mountains and I'm facing these elements, is I try not to let it paralyze me, right? I try to overcome it, right? And it's that's the courage that you drive from within yourself.
So from a training protocol, physically, we'll start there, and I do want to dive more into mental, but from a physical training protocol, is there anything in particular you're doing aside from our workouts to prepare you? I mean, sled drags, backpack, rucking. What are you doing?
Yeah, so good question, because for this particular expedition, I decided to kind of switch gears a little different than how I chose to prepare when I did Denali at first. And so, and one thing that I said, right, I always tell this to people, is like, yeah, I do not hold back from doing any of the CrossFit workouts that we do at the gym, NC Metcons, NCX, whatever that is, right? But for this particular expedition, what I chose to do is kind of outside of that, also prioritize more the endurance training. So for me, I kind of just made it a natural thing, right? That I needed to hit those trails, long duration runs at some of the steepest technical trails that you would find in the area.
So you found that, based on your experience, the long, slow distance training with vertical climb was the way to go, without a ruck on?
With the rock, some without a rock. Yeah, I kind of mix it up here and there.
Just time on your feet.
That is correct. Yeah, time on my feet, right? Can I go for 8 hours? Can I go for 10 hours while covering distance, while dealing with the inclination and so forth?
Wow. And then, you know, from a mindset perspective, I imagine there's something so beautiful about it. You know, part of me, I would love to experience this, being on the road, you know, in an area where, you know, you have Sherpas, and it seems like a very spiritual place in the Himalayas.
It is.
And you're going to be out there for months, and I imagine that there'll be this really beautiful. I mean, have you talked to people who have experienced it before? And it just sounds like a very spiritual place. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it is, right? And that's what I wanted to dive in a little more, right? Because this is an area that I've never been to before, right? So for me, that just brings more excitement. And I've known a lot of people that climb Everest, and I have managed to stay in touch with them, so I can just I can better get insights on what took them to do it successfully, right? And so
any key things from them that, I mean, not to cut you off, but any key things from them that kind of threw you off that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, some people have reached out to me and say, you know what, don't overthink it, right? Trust yourself. I think you're physically prepared for this, and mentally prepared. Just kind of be more mindful of what to find to do at Everest Base Camp, so that you can kill time.
Because you get bored.
Yeah,
right?
you might get bored. Yeah. So for me, guess what? I always find ways to entertain myself, and I'm probably going to do some training there. So don't mind me if you see me holding a rock and doing goblet squats.
Right.
And so, but going back to the spiritual side, right? And I want to just kind of make a reference to the Sherpa community.
Yeah.
Right?
Because they're going to be with you along this journey.
Yeah, we heavily rely on their support, right? These are, I like to call them as superhumans, right? Because they're just meant and built to live in these areas and be able to adapt even faster than probably you and I, right? And so they're deeply connected to the mountains, right? They hold a high regard, respect to the mountains, right? And so they respected us, the mother of earth, right? And so just to describe one particular ceremony that we'll be doing at Everest Base Camp prior to start doing this rotation is called the puja ceremony. Right? Puja ceremony. So this is where all the expeditioners and the Sherpas,
and we're talking
together.
At that point, this is peak time, is that correct?
That is correct.
So you'll have hundreds?
Yeah, we're looking at hundreds.
Hundreds?
Yeah.
Couple hundred?
Yeah, couple hundreds.
Couple hundred?
It's a highly commercialized expedition, specifically Everest.
So a couple hundred people there, and then how many Sherpas do you think?
Yeah, so for my team, I'm going with 2 Sherpas, right? So typically, depending on the company, the guiding company that you're looking to go with, right? They could give you a 1 Sherpa to a climber, or could be 2 Sherpas to a climber ratio.
And you're doing 2 Sherpas?
I'm doing 2 Sherpas.
To 1 climber?
That is correct.
And how many people are in your group?
So far, there's 4 of us. I know that there's this guy from Norway, this guy from Ireland, and I know there's another one from the US.
Wow. Very cool. Okay, so back to so you're at base camp and they're doing this ceremony.
Yeah, the puja ceremony.
Yeah, so what is that?
So think about just this spiritual ceremony, right, that the Sherpas put together, and they raise prayer flags, right, to send these prayers to the gods of the mountain in hopes to ask for permission for a safe passage.
So the prayer flags, are you talking about the ones that go on
that is correct.
like
the Tibetan
prayer flags?
Yeah.
They I imagine they're all over the place there.
Yeah. Once we do the puja ceremony, that's when they raise this the prayer flags and everything. Yeah.
And now from a connected to the mountain, so these Sherpas at certain elevations, they don't even need oxygen when we would. Is that true or no?
Yeah, they will move way faster than you and I without oxygen. Yeah.
Without oxygen.
Yeah, they are just meant for those type of terrains.
And becoming a Sherpa, do they start when they're really young, or how does that even? Do you know much?
Yeah, I do. I mean, part of it is deeply rooted in their culture, right? Some of these villages are already on altitude, right? So
they were born and raised.
Yeah, they were born and raised with it. So it's like for them, just like they're just naturally superhumans, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, at what point can a Sherpa? They are there to, I imagine, guide you, make sure that you're as safe as possible, and then also, do they carry some of your load as well, or?
Well, so just to give you a better perspective on that, right? So for a lot of Western expeditions, right, we heavily rely on the Sherpas, right? Because they're the first ones to come up, and they call them the ice doctors, right? Because they're the first ones to come up and establish fixed lines, right? That you can then easily access Jumarin and everything.
And do those fixed lines have to be reinstated like on a regular basis, or they
have to be maintained? Yes,
they have to be
maintained. Right? They're typically settled in a picket anchor system.
Yeah.
And so constantly they'll have to be maintained so that they're still grabbing onto solid ice.
So then they're up there and they're monitoring the mountain.
That is correct, right? So you move with them. They would assist you so that you can safely move through these fixed lines. Do the ladder crossing as you cross these different crevasses and so forth.
And so when I think about a ladder crossing, I've seen it on TV. Like literally, I'm thinking it's a ladder across a
massive sheer drop.
A massive sheer. Like that's literally what I think it is. Like literally a aluminum janky ladder across this, and you're literally like crawling across it,
making sure that you don't lose balance. So, and it gets even more technical, to be honest, right? So let's think about. I'll picture the following, right?
Yeah.
Between Camp 3 and Camp 4, right? That's what they call the Yellow Tower. And this is, it's also known as the Lopsy Face. And it's this massive wall, right, that you climb using fixed lines. So you think about sidestepping through that while wearing these boots, right, with crampons biting into the ice. You're already reaching near 26,000 at that point, right?
So when you say fixed line, so there's a line up above. So if something you
which has been already established by the Sherpas.
You clip into it, so this way, if you do fall, you're only going to fall X amount of feet.
Exactly.
And you're just climbing up these walls. And that's a training example about what you're going to happen when you actually go to climb. Is that what
that
occurs?
Is correct. Yeah. So at least part of the training that we'll be doing at Everest Base Camp prior to doing the rotations will be some of that, right? Kind of practicing ladder crossing, how to Jumar effectively, and how to rappel down out of these sheer drops.
So have you done, with your previous experience, because this one, what makes Everest, I think, even more scary is, yes, it's the height, but it's the cold, it's the ice
and exposure, right? Because when you think about crossing the Kumbo icefall, right, this is a massive glacier that is constantly moving, and you climbing these massive sheer drops that it could be scary. Yeah.
So how do you train for that other than being at base camp, or I mean, you're not in the gym like mimicking like, you know.
Yeah, you hit a good point, right? Because from a high altitude perspective, right, it's very difficult to mimic something like that at the gym. For me in particular, like sometimes I recur to wearing this oxygen restricted mask, right? But it's not something that really emulates high altitude, right? And the reason why I use it for me specifically is just to kind of build more diaphragmatic muscles, meaning
Yeah,
can
yeah.
my diaphragm span
Yes.
bigger and so forth, right? That's why I should have said, right, that I'm kind of the athlete, the coach, right, that toggles between the gym life and finding time to cut out to the mountains so that I can do what I call hypoxic training. And one example that I'll give you, right, for in terms of hypoxic training, which is the best that you can do, is really go to high altitude,
Right.
And for me here, at least in the Bay Area, right, I try to just make the commute up to up north in Shasta.
Yeah.
And literally, right, if I were to live from San Francisco, I would say that I will be standing at 250 feet or so, and making the commute to maybe 7,000 feet, which is the trailhead at Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta is a 14er, by the way, a 14er constituting a 14,000
Yeah.
peak in elevation. And my way of doing it, right, I never do it as an overnight trip, meaning I don't go up to this point and camp overnight. I just do it one straight shot.
Right.
Go through the suffering, in and out, descend it fast.
So all this suffering, and it's long suffering, right? Like when you're out there at Shasta, you're by yourself.
By myself. Yeah.
So you're by yourself for 8 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta almost be developing some mindset, almost like a David Goggins, I imagine you have really calloused your mind to overcome struggles. I mean, is there stuff that in your early age, I mean, what makes you want to go do that, you know?
Yeah, good question. And I actually like that you make a good reference to David Goggins, because yeah, I actually admire this guy. I have listened a lot of his stuff, right? I like his life story.
Yeah, his book
I feel like I
very
relate a lot to his life story as well, in the terms of the background that I was that I come from.
Because you were born in Honduras.
I was born in Honduras, correct. I was born in Honduras, in this small border town near El Salvador, and this is an area, right, that it was underdeveloped at the time, right? And so I grew up away from having privileges of being able to play with a nice toy, right? I actually had to fabricate my own toys, right? If I wanted to play with a gun toy, I had to make it out of a stick or something, right? That was my way of life. Yeah, so those were my upbringings, right? Like constantly on my feet. Yeah.
So did you grow up in a village with is the village the right term? No.
Yeah, at the time it was considered a village. Now it kind of has developed a little more, right? So the population has increased.
But did you have running water and sewer and all that stuff?
At the time we didn't.
At the time you didn't.
So
for you,
we didn't have main roads, no electricity whatsoever.
So that's how you were born and raised.
That's how I was born and raised.
And I mean, so for you, and your mom came to the United States when you were young, right?
That is correct. So my mom was a single mother at the time, and just when I was 2 years old, she felt the need to move into the States so that she could find better opportunities for ourselves, right? Her main dream was just to provide, right? It took, a good while for us to be able to reconnect. And so,
10 years, right?
10 years, literally.
That's a little.
Yeah,
that's
a little
longer
much.
than a little while. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So then, when you were back in Honduras, who raised you? Your grandparents?
So yeah, I was raised by my grandmother and uncles. Yeah, at this village. Yeah. Later on, as I grew up, I think it was probably 9 years old, I moved with one of my aunties into the capital city of Honduras, and that's when we were kind of setting grounds for me to move into the States.
Wow. Yeah. And so, I mean, a lot of this stuff, I mean, it's overcoming obstacles. It's mental strength. I mean, it's interesting because if you look at your background, I mean, I imagine you surely didn't grow up as a what's the term, silver spoon? You didn't have
absolutely not. Yeah. And so and that's what I wanted to say, right? Is that in life, we all have a story, right?
Yeah.
I stayed true to this, that in the belief that we all have a story and everything, right? For me, I have tried to use my struggles in life to fuel me to find greatness, right? I strongly believe that we all hold greatness in ourselves, and it's just a matter of finding those ways to fuel and find them, right? And so for me, this is I derived a lot of inspiration from the struggles I went through as a kid, right? Growing up without my parents and so forth. And so that's my biggest fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's next? So you have, I mean, obviously you're getting ready for Everest, of course. And that is full focus all the time. And I cannot wait to hear the stories and just, I have this visualization of just you out there with the Tibetan people, just like, connecting. I really do. I don't know why. I have this very clear vision of it. And I mean, I hope it turns out exactly the way I'm thinking. Because I'm seeing this just as you're super happy and they're just stoked. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm sure it's going to be a lot more stressful than that, but it seems awesome. No, you go up, you accomplish your goal. And the goal is to go to the summit. That's it. That's the goal.
That's the goal, right?
Now, what if the goal, I got to ask, what if you don't, I mean, what is the likelihood of you not achieving that particular goal of actually hitting like the highest peak, but maybe getting to certain areas? What is the likelihood of actually not accomplishing that and maybe accomplishing another version of success?
Yeah, well, good question, right? Because depending where we get in Everest, right, it's still going to be a benchmark.
100%.
Right? Let's say I get to Camp 4 and because of weather, there is no weather opportunity for me to make a summit attempt, right? That in itself is going to be an established benchmark, right? Saying that, you know what, I reached 8,000 meters, I'm happy with that, I can go back home safe, right? And prepare for maybe a near future, to repeat it in a near future.
Yeah.
Right? But what I wanted to
I love that example.
Yeah, what I wanted to dive in, right? It's like, this goes far beyond a personal goal of mine in the sense of, okay, I want to prove me that I can defy human limits, right? And test my fitness, test my will and so forth, right? This goes beyond that. And what I wanted to share with you is that this is a pretty lofty goal for me in the sense that I'm looking to establish myself to be the first Honduran summiteer at Everest.
Oh,
and
you would be the first?
The first Honduran. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you, right, is because for the lack of all this time, right, is my country has shied away from having someone represent and establish this benchmark for them. And so this is what we're aiming for.
That's awesome. And so when you look at the background from most of the climbers, would you say that it's primarily, what country do you think primarily summits Everest?
This is a sport that is highly dominated, right, by the Anglo community. So when you think about Europeans, especially people that grew up near the Alps, right? It's like they grew up with the mountains. You would think that a lot of these countries hold, world records of, a multitude of 8,000 meters that they've probably already climbed in the Himalayas. And so, so it's pretty diverse, I guess, in the sense of at least the Anglo-American community.
But I mean, so you would be the first Honduran, and you have to excuse my, I guess, ignorance here. In Honduras, is there a large, mountain? What type of mountaineering is there available in that country?
Good question, right? Because
I have no idea.
Good question, because I will tell you that it's so funny that we're actually a very mountainous territory. However, when you think about glaciated mountains, right? We kind of don't have peaks that are all snowed in or anything like that. And so for that, it just takes for people to be able to travel international to get that experience, right? I'm fortunate that here in California, right, this is where my passion literally began for mountaineering, right? Because we're close to the mountains and we were able to get that exposure.
But you talk about going internationally and traveling. I'm just thinking about your trip. You're gone for months. How do people who mountaineer fund such a thing like this? How do typically people fund it? Do they have traditional jobs and they go ahead and say, hey, I'm taking a sabbatical for 2-3 months? How does that normally work? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so for me, right, it's been a very deep sacrifice, right? This implies a lot of financial sacrifice from being away from your family, right? Making accommodations for that. And so for me, it took me a couple of years for me to kind of just fund it on my own, gather those resources, and with the support of a few people here and there, right, that we're being able to give personal gratuities. I feel like I'm so happy that this dream is finally coming to be.
Oh man, I'm super stoked. I cannot wait to see a picture of you with your Honduras flag.
We can't wait for it as well. We're stoked.
Yeah, and so it's going to be you and 4 people, and then you have hundreds of people at the base camp.
That is correct.
I mean, that's going to be your crew. So you're going to be with those 4 or 5 people for months.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to
get to know each other real well.
Get to know really well. Get pretty acquainted right from the start. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so after you summit Everest, is there the next, are you even, I mean, I know you're probably not thinking the next one, but is this where you want to do for the rest of your life? You want to identify mountains and go do it, and then maybe one day even help people do that themselves? So I'd love to do Yosemite Half Dome one day, which is
a good treacherous hike, by the way.
Which is when I'm talking about Half Dome, it's like a fraction of, obviously.
Yeah.
But I've never done any type of mountaineering, and it's very intriguing to me. Actually, that's a great question. I'd love to ask you. For someone who is interested in mountaineering, or at least getting their foot wet, just starting, where do you start?
Yeah, so I would just tell you, right, that from a pretty basic standpoint, I would just say, become a good hiker. If you can just become I happened to be such an avid hiker at the time, so that kind of just translated pretty fast for me, right? And so get comfortable to just do long hikes, right? Treacherous, steep hikes, whatever that is, carrying a pack, right? Absorbing nature, right? That's kind of like the beginning of it, right? And I guess the next bit would be is get comfortable with the cold, right? Start going to the snow a little more often and get comfortable with the snow.
And then if you had a recommendation for a first climb, I guess if you live in California, where would you go?
Yeah, so for me, it would be Mount Shasta, right? Capitalize that we have a nice 14er in height here in the area, right? And I actually guided a few people up in Shasta. And so I feel so happy that we've been able to instill that in other people and kind of teach them the trade, right? So yeah, this is 14,000 peak, right? That it would give you a true test of altitude.
Yeah, all right, I might take you up on that. When you get back from Everest, maybe I'll take you up on that.
Let's find one.
I really like that. And so I know you're getting ready for Everest. We have I know there's going to be an event here at the gym, and I'm super, super excited to hear how it all goes. Where can people, if people want to keep up on, I know you're not going to have lack of internet, but if people want to keep up on your particular journey as you go from place to place, are you going to be trying to report that in some way, or what's that looking like?
Yeah, so what I hope to do, right, I'll be carrying a two-way satellite communicator, right? It's not an actual phone, but it's a device that at least it would allow me to send the message to the satellite, which the satellite would send it back to the recipient that I intended to send it to, right? So I'm hoping that I will have this device at least for the days that I projected to be doing the summit attempt. I will leave established light tracking link on my social media profile so that people can just click on it and be able to maybe track our progress.
Oh, so we could real time see where you're at?
Yes.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll try to make my best effort to send an update here.
I would love that. So if someone wanted to see where you're at and then track you, you start on what day? You start the journey. When are you going to have the tracker available?
Yeah, I project that during the last 2 weeks of May, I'll be able to provide some sort of update on social media. I'll find a way to kind of find a social media manager, right, who can do the update on my social media. And then I will make sure that I kind of disclose when my live tracking link is going to be active.
Okay, and so Instagram, what is the best Instagram? I mean, we'll link it in the bio, but where should it be?
Ronald Quintero, HN.
Okay, and oh man, I cannot wait to see that go across. Well, dude, look, I'm super stoked for you. I hope you become the first Honduran to ever,
thank you, Jason.
Get on top of Everest.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited that you could do exactly what we're about here at this gym, which is helping people get outside the gym and go do cool stuff. Like for me, it's keeping up with my kids. For you, it's climbing Mount Everest which is a very big feat. And yeah, man, we're all really proud of you here at NCFIT, and thanks again, man, for taking your time.
No, thank you. I'm thrilled, and I'll be happy to show the outcome of this. I know that we're psyched to do this, so our goal is pretty clear. Go out there, right? Summit Everest, come back and re-share the story with you guys.
Well, I can't wait to do part 2 when we hear how it went.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Part 2 coming up.
Thanks, brother. That was fun. I love hearing about it.
Beautiful. I think we killed it. My voice came out better than I thought. Yeah.
It's so
How long
easy.
was that? It was a good hour.